Happy Memorial Day to everybody, and thank you to all of you who served and are serving. So we're going to start this discussion talking about education for veterans, okay? What are some of the biggest things that veterans should understand about their educational benefits?
Well, as I'm going through each of these benefits, I'm going to do it in different stages. If you are currently in service, you need to go to your education center. You need to know exactly what your benefits are, whether or not you've assigned some of them to your children, whether or not you have everything in your pot. Have you used any of it to go to perhaps a university or tech school near your base? And then you can transition to the outside world, but you need to make sure that if you have a school idea in place, that that school is accredited to accept your GI Bill. There are some out there that have been taken off the list simply because they were messing over soldiers. So make sure your school is ready and set for you. If you are already out, make sure that if you have the old GI Bill, whether you have the original and a 10-year limit, whether you have the 9/11 at 15 years, or whether you now have the forever GI Bill, what you have, what's left, and all check your state benefit, because in the state of Wisconsin, we have an additional 128 credits. So our guys can go for a master's degree.
It's like here in Texas with the Hazelwood Act. Wouldn't you say that people should also check with graduates of the school who are veterans to kind of get a sense of what the school might be as far as their, best use of their educational benefits?
Yes. You want to find out from those who have either already attended the school or are currently attending what level of degree they're actually getting response from their instructors, from the school, as far as support and things like that, whether or not they're aware of any other grants or scholarships that you might be applying for to help it make it easier for you financially to stay in school and perhaps only work part-time.
So tell me a little bit about Voc Rehab and how is that different than other educational programs?
As you come out of service, or if you are already out of service, you want to get hooked up with the VA. If you receive any type of a VA rating, such as the common injury is shoulders, the battle rattle, the parachute packs, the whole 9 yards, do a lot of damage to the shoulders. Well, if your shoulders are messed up or your knees are messed up from hard landings, then you are going to be limited in your employability. So vocational rehabilitation through the VA is going to allow you to take several different tracks. One is they will help you pick a degree program in a technical school or college that's going to fit your injuries. They're going to possibly work with an employer to make adaptation to your needs, whether it's a special chair because of your back injury. If you have difficulty with your hands, they may buy your employer Dragon software so that you can vocalize what you want typed. They may help you just with the resume and job searching, and they've got a list of employers that the local DVOPS, which is your Disabled Veterans Outreach Program people that work through your states, that will help you find employers that can adapt to your job needs. They also have a track that is just for those who are coming home and learning, say perhaps wheelchair environment, where they need to learn how to do things from wheelchair height. There's also grants of the employers and home grants to adapt your home. And there's the track that helps you if you decide you want to go into a small business of your own. You want to have your own barbershop. They will help you set up your job plan, your business plan, to go to the bank, to get the loans, to get set up.
Well, I didn't know that, Jane. I knew about Voc Rehab, but I wasn't aware of some of these other things. And thank you so much for sharing that. Have we covered everything that we want to cover here in the education track?
I think so.
Okay, let's talk about healthcare. And what's your advice to people that are on active duty as well as those that have departed the military?
Certainly. If you're currently still in uniform,
Yep.
you need to get your exit exam, and I don't mean the last 3 weeks you're in. You need to get it set several months ahead. If you have had shoulder injuries, you may need an MRI to show whether or not there's a slap tear, which is your labrum tendon in your shoulder, or you need a hearing test if you're working around jet engines or munitions or on the flight deck, so that you could show that there's damage to your hearing prior to leaving service. It makes your claim so much easier. Your exit exam is your beginning to receive your VA benefits. If you got injured in service and it's still giving you trouble, you twisted a knee, you got your jaw injured, even if it was in a bar fight, it wasn't your fault. If it was not through your own bad behavior, shall we say, then you need to make sure it's listed on that exit exam so that it can be evaluated later on. They may rate you at 0 now because it's not giving you any trouble, but 10 years from now, when the arthritis starts to develop in that joint, then they can start rating you for it. So you want to have that exit exam, and you want it complete on every injury or illness, but you want time to have the tests to prove those injuries.
One of the things I've also heard, Jane, is that a lot of times before you leave the military, you want to be able to get your own copy of your records. Why do you think that's important?
I think it's vital, especially if you've been in for any length of time. I was retired in 2004. I was transferred through the retired reserves, and my last unit, literally all my records from that unit are missing, except for the duty that I was doing out at the high tech in California where I was injured. So get a copy, get it on DVD. Myself, I had to get the old paper copies, and that's when I discovered that I had 4 years of missing records.
You had 4 years of missing records?
And they still do not exist. Pardon?
You had 4 years of missing records?
Yes. My last 4 years, even if I go on HRC's website and go into my account and everything, there's nothing there. So luckily for me, being hurt out in California, I had the line of duty paperwork and I had the emergency room records to show that my injuries to my spine and what were from service.
Wow, I didn't know that. I thought that they did a really good job of keeping records, but of course things happen, right?
Yeah, not in the paper day and age, but
Yeah.
these younger soldiers are lucky because they are electronic. They can hand them to you right on a DVD.
Interesting. Okay. When we talk about the veterans and retirees benefits, you know, when you get health benefits through the VA, what's your recommendation on that?
Well, every veteran and every retiree should enroll in the VA, even if they're not going to use the VA. Maybe they have great insurance, or the VA clinic is 3 hours away, or as a retiree, if they have no service injuries, they're going to base it on the household income minus household medical expenses. And if it's above certain measurements, which was, I believe it was 50-some thousand last year for a married couple, then they're going to say you don't have a financial need for us. But if you have a rating, even if you have a 0% rating, say for hearing loss, at the time there was a shift from beginning to end, but it's not enough to be a significant hearing loss when you left service, but you have a 0% rating, you can get those free hearing aids. Those are $5,000. So you can get treated for those things. Even if you have a less than honorable discharge, if while you were in service, you ended up with plantar fasciitis, you may not get the entire healthcare system, but you get treated for that plantar fasciitis. The other purpose for a veteran or retiree, even if they're not going to use VA healthcare to enroll, is It's your safety net. And it shows Washington just how many of us are out here that aren't using the system and why they need to better fund it. So help us get it better.
Hey, I got a question here, okay?
Sure.
So Kristen just asked, she says, are others able to get their exit exam? The VSO appointments have all been canceled here.
The VSO exams, are you talking active duty or are you talking
You know
already
what?
out?
Let me do this. Let's get her. I'm going to get her back here. Okay. Yeah.
If we can, yes.
All right, hang on a second.
Hey, sorry, it's Christian. I know the name looks a little funny. So for active duty going, I'll be retiring this year. So looking to do my VSO appointment, since you can do that 180 days prior to getting out of the military. All the VSO appointments here have been canceled due to COVID. They're not even doing them virtually. So if anyone knows of anyone out there doing it virtually, I'm more than happy to do that. But they basically canceled and said whenever we're able to come back for COVID, then at that point we'll do VSO appointments for you guys.
When you say a VSO appointment, are you talking just to find out about your benefits and to start your claim paperwork? Or are you talking about an exam?
So seeing the VSO so that they can start the exam process. So, you know, we'll get the SHIPI, the exam that the military does and says, hey, maybe you should go check out something. But seeing the actual VSO and having them look over your records with you and that individual saying, go get these items checked now so you can do this as part of your claim. They're not doing those appointments right now.
All right. So you're not looking to actually do your compensation and pension exams right now. You're looking to actually sit with the VSO to start your claim process.
Absolutely.
All right. Right now, because a lot of the VFWs, Vietnam veterans, American Legions, DAVs are shut down.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend reaching out to Wounded Warrior Project. They do it. I know here in Jacksonville at City Hall, part of their military veterans, military affairs and veterans department, they have 4 or 5 different VSOs that are there, and they're working remotely. So you might want to check with your go for certified VSOs. You'll see who pops up in your local area, and reach out to them. Trust me, there's still people out there helping.
I figured there was. I just haven't seen it here. That's one of the main reasons I jumped in on today's conversation. So anything y'all have, greatly appreciate it.
Where are you? Which part of the country are you from, Christian?
I'm in the Norfolk, Virginia area.
Okay. Jane, you were going to add something, and I had a question.
Yes. I would add that if you know where you plan on making your landing zone once you're out, that you call that State Department of Veterans Affairs or county that you're going to be living in, because there are county veterans service officers. They can do a lot for you over the phone. I used to work with a lot of family members for both extremely wounded and or pension, where the kids were taking care of their Korean War or World War II veteran. And I would do things a lot over the telephone with them. So they can guide you through those things and get you started on what to do. They can also send you the paperwork where you could file to initiate your claim. And then you may have to wait until you get back here to do your exams. But you do want to try and get that exit exam done. And as I said, you want everything on there. But you can start a claim before you leave service. It's just that it won't be dated till the day you leave service.
Absolutely. Okay.
So this is another thing that and by the way, Bruce Thompson is joining us as a panelist. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, how you doing, Mark?
Matt. I'm Matt. Mark is my mother's name. So Bruce and Jane, certified veteran service officers, what does that mean? Help the people that are not aware of that. What does that mean to me, the person that's still on active duty? Why do I want to find those people?
You want to take that, Bruce?
Well, I'll tell you, I am not a certified VSO. I am someone who understands the process from what my experiences were. And I have plenty of certified VSOs that I work with But I usually help a lot more in the transition process. What do you want? What's your why? What do you want to do after service? And then I talk about, the disability that lasts a lifetime. So do it right the first time so you don't have to mess around with it for the rest of your life.
That's the hard part. But to become a certified or accredited is the word that's used by VA. An accredited veteran service officer is someone that has gone through the training, taken the 4-hour test, gotten a background check to make sure they're not wanted for bank robbery in California. And then, in my case, I went through my state training, became state certified. Then I went to the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers, NACVSO, did their training, did their testing, and through memorandums of understanding, I was certified with the VFW, the American Legion, Vietnam Veterans of America, Disabled American Veterans, Military Order of the Purple Heart, and other organizations. But once you become accredited, you must maintain that by so many hours of training every year. And then there is a requirement for every 5 years testing. That couldn't happen because of other things that were going on. So that still held in place. The VA does their background check on you. They sponsor you. And over the last 5 years, we, as CVSOs, being retired, I no longer have access, but an accredited CVSO can actually go into the VA's computer system, look at your claim if you have signed an authorization for them to do so, and they can say, oh, I can see this document, this document, this document, and oh my gosh, they scanned in your marriage certificate and the 2 children's birth certificates as one, and that's why they're only paying you for 1 dependent. We need to go and point out to them that you have 3 dependents. So that accreditation gives them access to your actual file. And that is so meaningful. One of my veterans, I can't think of how many pages in his file, but I went all the way back to late 1960s and found the one sick call slip that proved his claim. So that documentation and being able to see it is real important. So that's why you want accredited VSO. The other thing is they are a veteran and they are free. Do not go out there and hire a lawyer right away. Do not go out there and hire a claims agent right away. If they're telling you it's going to cost you money, then you need to step back. You can go to the VA website and search for accredited VSO rep, or when you go through e-benefits, if you have an account, it'll allow you to sign a POA, power of attorney, but it's only on your claim. They have no other legal rights over you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you sit down and start talking with anybody who's, I want a percentage of what you get, or I want a fee, I tell you to get up and run away. They're not the people that are doing this for you. All certified VSOs, they're doing it for free. It's something that they've come up and done. Now you might have someone who figured out a way to make money out of this. There's too many people that are going to take advantage of veterans. As we transition out, we don't know what we don't know. We haven't been through it. So that's a process to take. And I'll tell you, go talk to individuals between the Vietnam Veterans of America, the Veterans for Foreign Wars, the American Legion. They're going to tell you exactly what the process was, the negatives that they've had to go through. Learn from their mistakes, their lack of knowledge when they transitioned, so you don't make the same mistakes and suffer from that same lack of knowledge when you're going through and doing your filing, your CMP, and you're spending money that we might not have or definitely don't need to for someone who wants to do something for money instead of as a free service.
Yes. And as a fellow veteran, we're looking out for you to make sure that your claim goes in as possible the first time. There's all sorts of little quirks and things that are needed to support it. And if it goes in the first time right, And if you're having financial distress or you have, God forbid, a terminal diagnosis, we can actually call our VSO liaison, submit that evidence, past due bills and such to them. They will get your claim expedited, and it can be turned around in just a matter of weeks with back pay within a matter of days after that. So we're there to help, and we're there to get it right the first time if at all possible. But there are cases where you do end up having to go to a lawyer, changing a presumptive. There's only been 2 glioblastoma cases in the United States that have been awarded. One of them was my veteran. We did the claim, we did the initial appeal, and then when we got to the higher level appeal, I gave it to a special lawyer out in California who took a genomic oncologist 30-page opinion report, and he won his claim shortly before he died, so his wife was protected. So it's a process, but there is an appeal process for things that are unusual.
So let's talk about money, and we've mentioned, you know, doing the exit physical, doing the okay. What should we talk about in terms of money? What are some of the things that some people miss when they actually get ready to leave the military? What would be the number one there, Jane?
Well, financially, there's 2 benefit programs for the veteran coming out of service. One of them is very familiar, is compensation. It is based on the loss of employability. So if you are coming out of service with a knee or a shoulder injury, or say you just had shoulder surgery, while you are in the stage of being healing, then you are considered 100% service-connected disabled. And during that time, they will pay you at the 100%. That 100% rating is a $3,000 a month income. That will help you get through that rough time. Once you're, quote, healed, then you will be re-examined, re-evaluated, and maybe reduced to 10, 30, somewhere in there, %. Matt, can you see me?
I can see you well. Yes.
Okay. Well, I've lost you.
No, I'm tracking. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Okay,
So,
that's fine. Let's talk about loss of employability. What does that mean?
Yeah, employability. There we go. Got you back. I just had to move my cursor. It timed out on me. But the total idea of compensation is that if a veteran gets to the point where their injuries have progressed, you may be rated 30% when you come out of service, and after 40 years, you've had knee replacements and shoulder replacements and other things like this, and now you're at 70% or greater, the VA is going to look at you and say, okay, can he stand long enough to do a standing job? Can he sit long enough to do a sitting job? Is there nerve damage in his arms so that he can't use a keyboard or even hold a pencil for that matter? That's when they say, okay, your rating is 70%, but you're not able to reasonably go out and earn a decent income. So the VA says, we're going to go ahead and make up the difference of your compensation and your employability, and we'll pay you at the 100% rate. And that would be approximately a little over $3,000 plus dependent pay, and other additional benefits can be added on there. So it should get you by, and at that point, you can also look at Social Security disability and combine the 2.
So we have a comment from Lynn. Lynn, I'm going to let you talk, or you had a comment you'd like to make. Please do. I want this to be as interactive as possible.
Well, hello, Jane. It's a long time no see. No, it was. I get a lot of questions regarding, well, the IU 100%, And then I see a lot of people, like, they'll call me and say, hey, but I want to be a 100% scheduler. And then I always have to tell them, hey, if you have 60% or more of individual, and I see that a lot with a lot of people. So I guess the question in the general idea, what is the difference between the IU and the scheduler? Because a lot of people question that.
Okay. Scheduler is when your injuries all add up to over 100%, but it's using the VA math. So if you have a 50% injury and a 10% injury and another 10%, that adds up to 60% in the VA's mind, because they do a percentage of what's left over. So at 50%, it's 10% of 50, which is 5, which now leaves 45. So 10% of 45 is 4.5, which adds up to 59.5. So it rounds to 60. But if your injuries all add up, doing their math, to 100%, you are scheduler by the schedule of injury. Unemployability is you're not employable. You're not expected to be able to go out and be able to achieve full-time work at a level that will give you a decent income, and then they pay you the difference. You may have a heart problem. You may have had a heart attack in service, and now you've gotten to the point where you are 60% blockages, congestive heart failure, things like that. And the VA says, you know, it's not reasonable to expect him to work 40 hours a week, so we're going to give him the unemployability. So if you have one thing at 60% or a bunch of other things that add up to 70% or greater, you can be considered for the 100% pay, even though you're not a 100% scheduler.
Thank you for that. So let's talk about chemical and environmental injuries. This is always one of the big issues with people, like Agent Orange and the Navy offshore. Tell us a little bit about that and what's been your experience with that?
Unfortunately, chemical and environmental injuries are significant. The first one I want to start with covers all veterans, all period of active duty, 90 days or greater. You are nearly twice as likely to develop ALS, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So because of that, the VA says if a veteran develops it, we will automatically assume that it is due to his military service. They have not been able to pinpoint exactly why, but they do know that there are several things that cross all branches. So they just went ahead and said, look, you walk in with a diagnosis of ALS, the VA says military service, and they rate you. And as that disease progresses, you get reevaluated at your request. The VA is not going to come looking for you. You have to request reevaluations, and eventually they will take total care, home adaptation, even nursing home care, while they're still paying you compensation. The other chemical things are Agent Orange, Agent Blue, Purple, and all the other herbicides used in Vietnam. The burn pits, and we're seeing a lot of respiratory problems from our soldiers that were exposed to burn pits. Then we also have, from 1953 to 1987, the water on Camp Lejeune. If you are Marine stationed at Camp Lejeune, 53 to 87, you need to sit down with your VSO, go over the list of illnesses. Even if your illness, your cancer, is not on that current list, you still want to file a claim so that the VA can see the numbers of how many of the Marines there have a particular illness. That's the way they built the list on Agent Orange. We need to build it for Camp Lejeune. And then environmentally, there are things like Korean War. A lot of the guys had frostbite. Environmentally, over in the Middle East, you have a lot of different bacteria and worms and other things like that. One of my young women was down to less than 100 pounds when they finally figured out that she had had somehow ingested a worm of some type, and it was actually eating her food for her, so she was gaining no weight. She was losing weight. So you need to be aware of each period of service has different things. You also have the chemicals peacetime, but you're working on jet engines or you're in small arms repair and you're using the chemical tanks to clean weapons and things like that. Those chemicals are highly toxic. One of my veterans had a lot of issues getting jet fuel on the ground and walking in it. His boots were constantly wet and soaked in it, and the nerves in his feet started dying. So that was related to his military service.
So let's stop here for a second to ask a question, okay? So obviously you need some more documentation from people outside the medical records. Is this where you would get the letter saying so-and-so, I worked with so-and-so at Berkshire Air Force Base, and I noticed that he often had his, he worked on a plane and often got his feet, saturated with fuels, therefore that would explain his issues now?
Yes.
Okay.
In the military, we're always told, don't be a sick call ranger.
Yeah.
So you pull your back, lifting weights at the gym, getting ready for your PT test. You go back to the barracks, you eat a bunch of ibuprofen or Motrin or any of that kind of stuff. You know that they're just going to give you an ice pack and Motrin anyways. So you self-treat. But your roommate is the one that you're working out with a lot, and he has seen that injury happen. He has seen the side effects of that injury, the reoccurrence of that injury and things. So instead of a medical treatment record, you have an eyewitness, just like any other court case.
So Bruce, I know you're on here, we had talked about this last week. You're a retired Marine, do you see a lot of Marines kind of fearful of going to sick call, and then towards the end of their career or after their career, they still have that attitude? What would you say they need to?
Well, again, I think it's across all the branches, between E5, E6, and all officer ranks. Going to sick call is frowned upon. And none of us want to lose our deployability status, because that's a career buster at points. So the problem we have is we don't talk about it. Hopefully a lot of people, since we're starting to get it talked about more and making it a common conversation, will go and get, at least during their annual physicals, come back up and say, well, I had this issue or that issue, so it can kind of get added in. But towards the end, I tell people, if you haven't gone to sick call, you got to start. And the problem is when I tell them, you have to be open and honest about all the things that ail you, all those things that got broken in service. And, I'll definitely speak for, the Marines. We have this, we're Superman, we can't be hurt, nothing's going to phase us. And then there's always the second part of, I don't want to file a VA disability claim because I don't want to take away from others. Yeah. And even when it gets explained that, no, you're not taking anything away from anyone else, this is something that, through your service you've earned, there's still so many that, that personal pride, they don't understand what goes with them. And, that's when they get either, they don't file at all, or they get a very low rating, and they'll have to file later on for all those things that are actually ailing them. But then it becomes burden of proof. Did it happen in service? Did it not happen in service? Why did you wait 2, 3, 5, 10, 20 years to file? And that's where we're looking at, a lot of the Vietnam veterans that are still in there, and the Cold War era veterans. No one ever told them to file a VA disability claim. No one ever told them, it was available. And that happened pretty much up until and through the 90s. So now we're telling, definitely the post 9/11, this is something that you do, but we're still having to go back and help those veterans that never filed because they didn't know they could. And now they got that, burden of proof that it happened while in service. And that's a hard thing to do. And that's what we talk about, buddy statements. You know, we talk about having to go back and make sure all these things happen. And some of those, and a lot of this is being seen with the Vietnam veterans, a lot of the buddies have already passed. So now it's really hard to get that burden of evidence to get the VA to say yes.
I agree. I agree. I see a lot of the women, I work with a lot of women veterans up here in Florida now, and it's terrible, especially the MST cases, regardless of what era.
Yes. And the idea of taking away from others, remember, when you come out of service, you have to require hearing aids to get much of a rating at all for hearing loss. But getting that rated 0 or getting that shoulder rated 0 has you set up for later on in life when it becomes interfering with the quality of your life, rather than trying to, as Bruce said, find those guys. So, and it's not really too terribly difficult nowadays with technology, but 15 years ago when I started as a CVSO, it was a trick sometimes to find the veteran that served with another veteran during the Korean War.
Wow. But you did though, right, Jane? You helped them find it.
Yes,
But now
actually,
with Facebook and LinkedIn, it's so much easier. Let's talk about the PTSD, which is probably one of the most misunderstood of all the military-related illnesses.
Yes.
yes.
Lynn, you were going to say something, please.
Oh yeah, I see. I guess you see it. You see it in and out with the organizations and the nonprofit I run. That's the main cause. The PTSD, the MST. Regardless of what it is, there's so many, and people didn't recognize it, and it didn't come out until what was it, 2008, 2010. I think that's when we switched over to the DSM.
Yes, DSM-5. Yep.
Yeah.
So how can family members talk to their veterans about PTSD? What do you recommend, ladies, and Bruce, and anybody else who would like to weigh in?
Social support.
What does that mean, Lynn? I understand it, but I want to hear from an expert.
Social support. We have found, we've been on so many podcasts this week for MST and PTSD, and we have found that not just, okay, you can be part of, the spouses can be there, but sometimes the spouses don't understand, or it's so tough on the spouses that they just can't handle it anymore. We see that a lot, that they are seeking out help and it's not working. So somebody, which I've worked with Bruce in the past too. Bruce is a wonderful guy. And he's helped us along the way also to be able to just be a brother, just be a sister, just be that support. Hey, do you want to go with me fishing? Do you want? And we see a lot of, and it's connected to the PTSD because we've tried all this other stuff, and now we see the social stuff of it. And that's what I see a lot of people coming out with, and it's helped them more.
Remember, when it comes to mental, emotional, or moral injuries, that's all part of PTSD. PTSD is not a separate illness. It consists of anxiety. It consists of depression. It consists of a lot of different things. They say the fear of life, the fear that your life is about to be taken, whether it's by having been attacked in service, whether it's being in the combat zone, whether a high suicide rate in your unit, or having to help bring back the remains to posts so that they can be taken care of properly and honorably. Those are all things that lead to the combination of mental health issues that PTSD is. A veteran may be severely depressed one day, and the next day they may be giddy to the point of being irresponsible. Those are signs of PTSD. That's when the veteran needs to start making use of the tools that are out there. The VA has a great system. First off, we have a national suicide hotline, and it's not just for veterans, it's for everybody.
Mhm.
But if you press 1, you're going to talk to someone who really knows what military issues create these problems for us. And you're going to be able to text them and everything else like that if you want. You can stay totally anonymous. You can get a hold of your VSO or CVSO in the area. They're going to know where the nearest veterans vet center is. That vet center is a group of counselors. They're all veterans. Most of them are combat veterans. They've all got their degree in counseling. They know how to sit down and talk you through the questions and find out what's going on, where your depression, anxiety, anger, alcohol abuse, drug use, and things like that are coming from. Their notes are then used by the psychiatrist who can actually diagnose you. But if you never want to be diagnosed and you never want to file a VA claim, you can stay with that counselor for 10 years or a lifetime. But if you want to file that VA claim, you need to get diagnosed. So eventually, sooner or later, you're going to have to transition at least for one visit to that psychiatrist so that they can say, yes, I agree, based on all these notes and my questions to you, that your emotional and mental and moral injuries started or were highly aggravated by your military service. And that then becomes a claim.
Let's switch over to another topic, which is wartime veteran survivor pension. So I've opened the slide up. Explain to me what this means to the average veteran who doesn't understand this concept.
Mind, I'm going to go ahead and take that.
Please.
That is the benefit that 99% of all veterans that I met with over almost 12 years had no idea that benefit even existed.
Correct.
Wartime veterans pension. 55% of our veterans right now are over the age of 65, which means Vietnam, Korea, World War II. So a large part of our veteran population are wartime from there. Then there's the 20-year plus window, 30-year now window of our youngest veterans. They are wartime. So these two windows of time have a benefit called a war veterans pension. It also applies to the surviving family, which we'll talk about later. But right now, if we took the household income, subtracted off the household medical expenses, to make it easy, I'm going to use the example. A veteran that has a $2,000 Social Security check, his spouse has a $1,000 Social Security check. They subtract off $300 alone for Medicare. And then they have to buy a supplement, and now she's paying for expensive medications, and he might be using the VA, but she's in cancer treatment, and she's driving, 2 or 3 times a week for her treatments. And so all those expenses, from toothpaste to keep your dentures clean, to protective undergarments, all those expenses get subtracted off the income. Maybe they're actually living on $1,000 a month because of all those medical expenses. So then the VA says, well, how old are you? You're 72 years old. Your expected lifetime is another 15 years, and you have $60,000 in the bank in liquid assets, not your home, car, personal belongings. We can go ahead and start supplementing your income to at least give you an above poverty level living. So that's a couple say that's maybe living at home, but perhaps the veteran is in the assisted living. Well, now it's time to look at the income is upside down totally. And that veteran needs assistance with his daily tasks of living. The VA should be able to provide almost $2,700 worth of income to that spouse. It doesn't prevent doesn't prevent assets from being used, but it just reduces the speed at which they disappear. The other thing is that veteran, Bruce, let's hope this never happens to you. But if you were to become disabled in a car accident and you are not rated by VA, or you're very low rated by VA, and you're in a terrible car accident and you are now paralyzed from your armpits down, you're breathing on your own and that's about it. And you end up in a nursing home and you've burned through all your assets, or perhaps being a young man, you didn't have any assets. So you're on Medicaid. The VA says, we can provide an additional $90 of spending money, because a Medicaid veteran in assisted living or in a nursing home is only allowed to keep $45 spending money. But now with the VA nursing home stipend, you've got $135 to spend. You can afford the TV, the phone, the haircut, the newspaper subscription, things like that, that $45 a month didn't provide. Or you're a young man. I will use my youngest veteran at just under the age of 23 with a motorcycle accident. Had a compression injury and a brain injury. The gentleman pulled out of a driveway without looking. He was right in front of my guy and he went over top. So at first, the family called me from the emergency room and said, he was in between jobs. He doesn't have insurance. What do we do? And I said, well, that's okay, because last year when he came and saw me, we enrolled him, even though he's never used VA. So I called VA down in Milwaukee, who then had their nurse call the other hospital, and they said, when he's stable, call us and let us know. In the meantime, send the bills to VA. It took 4 months for him to stabilize up here. They put him in an ambulance, took him down to Milwaukee, which has one of the 5 premier spinal rehabilitation centers for VA. And he spent 6 months down there. He didn't have a medical bill at all. But being a young person with very little work history, he did not qualify for Social Security disability. So he had an $800 a month income. Although he was never going to be able to work again, his parents moved him into an apartment right nearby, and the VA provided him almost $800 additional so that he could afford to live there with mom and dad's assistance.
So let's move on to the last thing, which is the VA widower benefits. Help us understand this very important detail.
Yes. If the veteran is going to a CVSO or a VSO and sit down to talk benefits, they need to take their spouse with them, because you unfortunately disappear from this world too quickly. Survivor's pension. If that veteran served during a wartime, again, the VA is going to take the income, subtract off the medical expenses, look at the liquid assets, not the house, car, personal belongings. A lot of times, widows qualify that first year based on that veteran's funeral. The widow is also entitled if her veteran served wartime. The caveat to that is there is no age limit. That veteran's spouse may be 37, she may be 77. She may have assisted living, or she may just have that big funeral expense. On those circumstances, they may be on 1 year or the rest of their lives. And I said, it just helps reduce how quickly the assets disappear.
So Jane, the biggest thing is to get spouses involved with this, with the VSO. So the next time I go to talk to my veteran service officer, I'm going to take my wife, but she'll probably ask lots of good questions.
Please do.
And then, of course, we want to get to we want to go back to the idea of documentation. Okay.
But I think we should cover the other widow benefit first a little bit, Matt,
sure.
Just so that documentation becomes important for that too.
Sure.
Survivor's benefit is known as dependent indemnity compensation.
Right.
If that veteran dies of ALS, that spouse is entitled to DIC. If that veteran is a Vietnam guy and he dies of one of 37 cancers, and a whole bunch of other, or he dies of pneumonia because he's in the hospital after his treatment for his third Agent Orange cancer, and they put pneumonia on the death certificate, you want to make sure that the contributing factors, in other words, he wouldn't have gotten pneumonia and he wouldn't have drowned because of the pneumonia if he wasn't actively in chemotherapy and radiation treatment for his third cancer, so he had no immune system. So the cause of death and contributing factors are so important to getting that surviving spouse her dependent indemnity compensation. The only difference is if the veteran is 100% service connected for 10 years, whether unemployability or scheduler, and then gets hit by the city bus, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a service-connected death. That 10 years with 8 years of marriage to the last 8 years being married to that veteran gives them that additional benefit. So widows, there's a lot to learn. And besides, I find the women or the spouses listen closer than the veterans do.
True fact.
True fact. I can just see my wife going, "What? You haven't told me?" Yeah.
A lot of times the spouses don't know. A lot of times the spouses are always asking us questions because they don't know, and that's either that or the spouses, the veterans have already died.
Yeah. I can only imagine my
Help
wife.
that widow go through everything from, if it's a retiree, we can help the CVSO and VSOs can get them in contact with Defense Finance to get their survivor benefits and all the other things that go along with those types of benefits.
Now we want to talk about documentation. So this is kind of a a real important part of the claims process. And as some of you know, I do a little work on LinkedIn, and I've done some work on Facebook and all that. But Jane, you had some really specific things that you could help people find that. So help me. Let's walk through the first one, which is the National Archives and the ship and the hole, all that. What do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of times we're working with Navy veterans and they're going, well, I had 3 stitches in my forehead, or I clipped off the end of my ear in service when I hit my head on one of the hallway doors. I can't remember the name of those.
Bulkhead.
There you go. I don't speak every language, but those are great sites where you can go and find all sorts of history. National Archives, you can look up your ship and you can actually read day by day, oh yeah, so-and-so was sent to the sick bay for, stitches in his forehead. So-and-so fell down the stairs and broke his leg. Everything is in there, which is now so important for our Blue Water Navy guys. On the ship's hull number site, and that's actually, it's hull number as a word, the word number. Yeah. That site has the ships out there, and guys will go on and put their stories. They will put, this is my email address, and I'm looking for guys that serve from this time to this time, or I'm looking for Tommy Smith, things like that. So you'll be able to connect with your buddies. They will be able to write you buddy letters about working with the jet fuel and things like that. You also will one day be able to possibly help them by writing them a buddy letter for their injuries. Blue Water Navy guys right now, there is a great website that the VA, or a database that the VA has built. So if you served Westpac tours, there's a lot of ships that are already on the list with specific dates that tell when you were inside that 12-mile zone. That 12 miles is nautical, so it's 13.8 land miles. But if you were inside that zone, you were exposed to that cancer or other diseases that you dealt with, or that you have become a widow because of, you are entitled to benefits. And these are some of the places you can get them. When I helped my Korean War veteran, LinkedIn wasn't even there, I don't think. Facebook was not as popular, but I found other sites by Googling the unit or the valley that he was in and the year. And I found different websites where I could post little messages saying, I'm a vet CVSO assisting so-and-so who was here at this time. Do you know anybody? Or are you a Marine in this particular unit? He was Army. When the village that he was in got wiped out and he was stuck in the frozen rubble for 3 days, it was a Marine unit that came in and saved him. And so after a while, it took pretty close to 6 months, I believe. And then finally I got a phone call. My son said he saw a message, you were looking for one of us. And I said, well, my veteran gave me permission, here's his phone number. And he called my veteran, and 4 hours later, my veteran called me crying like a baby. He goes, I don't care about the VA. I don't care if I ever get anything. I finally got to thank one of them. That veteran went from 0 to 100% when this thing was done.
Wow. So
Not being able to walk.
what I would like to do now, Jane, first of all, thank you for giving time to this and sharing your expertise. And I've seen some really good VSOs. I'm seeing some, yeah, okay. But you're like, you just have that certain passion to help people. And I thank you for all those years of service. But now what I'd like to do, if you have any questions, please, raise your hand, use the Q&A forum. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
One thing I might mention, Matt, is if you're a spouse and you're listening to this, or you're the child of a veteran and the spouse is still surviving, and you have reason to believe that your veteran's death might have been related to service, and perhaps the information on the death certificate was inadequate at the time, or that death even was listed ALS 10 years ago before it was put on the presumptive list, you can still go in and file for these benefits. If it's not on the death certificate as a contributing factor, but as I said, the veteran that they only put pneumonia down when he'd been treated for other things, we went back, took the medical records in the state of Wisconsin. It's 1 year, and you can request an amendment to the death certificate. After 1 year, you have to have a doctor's opinion of the medical evidence, and you petition the court for the change of the death certificate. It's not always out of reach just because the paperwork was done back then. It's something you may need to go back and fight for, but it can be done.
Jane, thank you so much for sharing your. And obviously, there's some dog out there that thought that was great. I love that bark.
That was applause.
Was that
Wow.
applause? Oh, was it applause? Okay.
That was applause for Jane and all her time and effort.
Yeah.
Just trying to take care of my boys. When I retired, I was a platoon mama.
So this is Matt Shear. I'm really excited to have such a good audience today. We're going to record this for later, just so you know. And we will share this with other veterans and their spouses. Jane, again, thank you so much for being part of this. And thanks everyone for taking time to listen to this. This is Matt Shear from the Career Recon Series, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks, and
Here, everyone. Blessed Memorial Day, and thank you for all the service.